Good evening, everyone. Call the City Council to order at 8 o'clock Monday evening, December 5th. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have 23 items on this evening's agenda, and I will ask the City Clerk to please read agenda item number 1.
Minutes of the City Council meeting, November 21st, 2022.
Council Dumas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to accept and place on file.
Motion made and second to accept and place on file the minutes. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The minutes are filed, 11-0. Agenda item number 2.
Now is the time for the continued public hearing on the petition of Verizon New England to lay and maintain underground conduits and wires and cables to be placed therein under the public way on DeSimone Drive, order number 22-100-8722A.
Now, the councilors, we've been informed by the city solicitor as well as the petitioner. The petitioner is asked to remove this item from the agenda. As you're aware, Mass General Law requires public hearings when the utilities are going to go into public ways. DeSimone Drive is not a public way, so there is no need for a public hearing. They will work with the developer of the property to take care of that request for a service over on DeSimone. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to accept and place on file. Councilor Dumas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to place and accept and place on file. Thank you.
Motion made and second, accept and place on file. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It is filed, 11-0. Agenda item number 3.
Now is the time for the public hearing on the petition from National Grid to install a handhole and run conduit from pole number 14 to handhole at 157 Cook Lane, order number 22-100-8738.
Okay, for this public hearing, we'll take it up in 4 stages. First, for the public speaking in favor. Second, questions from the public. Third, public speaking in opposition. And finally, questions from the city councilors. So we'll open the first portion of the public hearing with the public speaking in favor, starting with the applicant. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Al Galvin, design engineer, National Grid Electric. So this is servicing a new customer at 157 Cook Lane. And there was an agreement to, instead of coming overhead the street to feed a new pole, decided to go with a handhole and run conduit under the road to bring the secondary power across the street.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else speaking in favor of the petition? Anyone else speaking in favor of the petition? Anyone else speaking in favor of the petition? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Questions from the public? Any questions from the public? Questions from the public? Any questions from the public? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Public speaking in opposition? Any members of the public speaking in opposition? Members of the public speaking in opposition? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Questions from the city councilors? Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I just have one question. You're saying this is going to go across the street?
Well, under.
It will go under the street?
Right.
Are you going to dig a trough, or are you going to drill across?
It'd be, yeah, trenched across.
Trenched across. Right. Okay, how wide is the trench going to be?
Generally, it's 30 to 36 inches.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Doucette. Any other comments or questions from the city councilors? Comments or questions? Councilor Oram.
Thank you. There's so many of these utilities. I believe this is the one our commissioner of the DPW addressed and was concerned about it. So I would ask that that information go in, I'd ask that that information go into the record, and maybe before we approve it, make sure the commissioner of the DPW is satisfied with the work that's being requested.
Yeah, no, I believe the commissioner's language was that he's okay with it as long as the standard conditions apply to that, and those will be part of the record that I'm sure Councilor Landers will make that recommendation at that time. Any other questions or comments from the city councilors? Question or comments from the city councilors? Question or comments from the city councilors? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing and the entire public hearing, and it is with public service. Councilor Landers.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I remember what the commissioner mentioned, and he was here representing the city, where the applicant was a city engineer. What I would like to do, Mr. President, is to move on this tonight. I would like to ask for a suspension of the rules, and then, you know, vote on this, that we can get this approved tonight.
Okay, so let me take care of that. So the council's asked for suspension of the rules to remove this item from public service. All those in favor of suspending the rules to remove from public service is removed from public service in the hands of the council, 11-0. Councilor Landers.
Okay, so the key is, my recommendation would be to approve this. We will follow all the rules and conditions. It so happens the applicant wrote most of those. But I think it's a single house. I think it would be good to move, get the electricity in there before we're too far in the winter. So I guess, do you want a motion at this time?
That'd be fantastic.
My motion would be to approve this petition to run the conduit from pole 14 to 157 Cook Lane. Thank you, Mr. President.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the petition with the conditions outlined by the DPW Commissioner. Right. A motion made and seconded to approve the petition with the conditions identified by the Commissioner. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? The petition is approved, 11-0. Agenda item number 4.
Now is the time for the public hearing on the petition from National Grid to install a push brace off pole 18 on Mechanic Street, which is needed to support a pole with wires going down Manning Street, or number 22-100-8739.
Again, this public hearing will be taken up in 4 stages. First, with the public speaking in favor. Second, with questions from the public. Third, public speaking in opposition. And then finally, questions from the city councilors. So again, we'll start the first portion of the public hearing with the public speaking in favor, starting with the applicant. Again, state your name and address for the record, Al.
Al Galvin, design engineer, National Grid Electric. So yes, there's a tap off of Mechanic Street going down Manning. And at pole 18, we noticed that that pole needed some added support from leaning and instability on the lines. So the push brace is the way to go with that, since we can't obviously anchor back towards the road. So this is to ensure there's no issues with stability on those primary power lines going down Manning Street.
Okay. Anything else, Al? Okay. Anyone else speaking in favor of the petition? Anyone else speaking in favor of the petition? Any members of the public speaking in favor of the petition? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Questions from the public? Again, Andrew, just state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, folks. Andrea Beebe. I reside on Clover Hill Street, but I own a property at 115 Mechanic Street, which this pole is right on the corner of my property. I was curious to know, is the support going on the street, on the sidewalk, or on my property?
It would stay within town property. That's why we're here, instead of asking for an easement from your from you. But it would be generally, without having seen it in the field myself, it'd be in line with how the cables are running along the street.
Okay, because the pole actually, when you're at the site and you're standing on the pole, it actually runs on what looks like on my property. So I was wondering if by the end of the night, if I'm not satisfied with this, would you be willing to meet me on the site to go over it and kind of point out exactly what you're going to be doing over there? Because I do have concerns that it could detrimentally impact my property and some of my residents who live in the building.
So can I answer that, Andrea?
Sure, please.
So this one probably will not get approved tonight. This
Okay.
will probably go to committee, and there will be time to have, whether it's National Grid or the engineering folks, show you exactly what's being planned, because I believe our engineers, I would say, have a alternative option to what's being proposed by the National Grid folks.
Okay, so...
That's still being discussed between National Grid and our engineering department.
Okay, so then perhaps my questions aren't necessarily...
You can ask them, and that way the chair's here and the committee members are here, and they'll be able to...
Okay, let me just run through them then.
Sure.
all the electrical and all the utilities for my property are right on the corner of my building, like in very close proximity to that pole. And I'm wondering if, I don't know the angle or what have you, and I'm concerned that I don't want access to my utilities obstructed by that pole. Like, the water goes in there, the electrical goes into my 24-unit building there. The cable, the internet, it's all right on that corner. So I just want to make sure that this wouldn't impact my ability to access all those things when we need to.
It shouldn't. No, they position the pole, the bracket of the pole, in a position at the top where it's out of the way of, your service drop or any lines coming off the pole. But again, where it enters the ground is going to be in town property, not yours. So I would assume there's no issue there with water lines or
Okay, but
other.
again, I guess I don't know, visually, not just where it hits the ground, but the slope, because it's a slope, right? It's not vertical.
Yeah, it's an angle.
so-
Just so the pole's being angled. Typically, this pole's about the same size as this one.
Yeah.
Just angled out, maybe 20 feet off, 25 feet
Okay.
off.
Which might go right across the area that I'm referring to.
Well, again, it's, if you have utilities that run in town property.
Yeah,
that
but I'm
may-
also, forgive me if I'm being unclear, but like I have, the cable boxes and the internet, they're attached to the outside of my building. So the service people, when my tenants call for service for internet and cable, the technicians come to the side of that building and need free and clear access to be able to do that.
Yeah, none of that would change. This is just a pole at that pole at the corner, supporting it upright. Doesn't change where the cables are going, nothing.
Oh, no. Again, I understand that. I'm just concerned that that actual pole is going to obstruct people's ability to access,
Oh.
the
Well,
actual pole
Yeah, I haven't
itself.
seen the layout of where, as long as there's a drivable surface there, they can maneuver around this brace. The crews can get at it. I'm sure that's what they looked at when the designer went out there. They wouldn't put it in a place where we can't work, you know what I mean?
Okay, all right.
So what I would offer, Andrew, is this will end up going to committee, and that would be the time to watch, and you can feed any comments. I'm sure the chair will be happy to take up any
Which-
written comments
Mr.
that you
Council
have.
Brandes, okay, so then, again, should I dispense with these questions and wait till it goes, okay?
You have the floor.
Okay. All right. Again, my other concern about this pole, depending upon the slope of it and the angle, I have a few residents who have windows on that side of the building, and I would hate for this pole to be coming down, like, outside their windows, so they're looking at this utility pole. These particular apartments, they're very small studios, and they only have one window, so I think it would be less than ideal to have to gaze out at this utility pole slicing through their view on their window.
So your building is very close to the street?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
a matter of feet,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so that's what they determined when the engineer went out there, working at the property, where's the best place to angle this pole to support the lines.
Okay,
Like he was saying, at the next one, if they come up with an alternative, maybe coming across the street to a secondary pole, bracing it a different way, that's always a possibility. Yeah.
all right. And then again, another similar concern that, again, I don't know how close it's going to be to my first floor tenant's window, and I don't know if that's going to create a safety issue, if somebody could step up on it to access her window. That's something I'm considering on behalf of my tenants.
Okay.
And also, too, how do you prevent people from climbing on it?
There really is no way to stop someone from doing it if they want to do it.
Okay,
I mean, it does reach the ground,
okay.
so if it's really truly that close to the building where you're worried about people being able to reach it from windows and things of that nature, I'm sure at this next meeting you can address that.
Yeah, I think that, so again, it is a matter of feet. Again, not knowing exactly where it's going, but it's darn tootin' close.
Yeah, I know with windows, as far as the power lines go, there's a minimum 3 feet away from windows. So, if the pole's, say, 5 feet off, you know, we have that buffer, or somebody can't reach it with their arm or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, apparently that's what they determine is the best spot at the time.
Okay. All right, so I guess that's all the questions that I have. I can't say that no offense to you, sir, but I can't say that I'm satisfied with the answers, so.
Sure.
It's still preliminary, Andrea. The design hasn't been finalized. We're going to hear something from the city engineer in a few minutes about what his thoughts are on it, so that might put you at ease a little bit.
Okay.
But again, the councilors have all heard your concerns, and
Yep.
I'm sure they'll take that under
Yep, and I've
consideration when it
spoken
comes
to a
up
few of them, so
in
thank
public
you.
service.
Okay, thank you. I
Thanks,
appreciate
Andrea.
it.
Any other members of the public have questions for the applicant? Any other members of the public have questions? Any other questions from the public? Hearing not, I close that portion of the public hearing. Any members of the public speaking in opposition? Any members of the public speaking in opposition? Members of the public speaking in opposition? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Questions from the city councilors? Questions from the city councilors? Questions from the city councilors? You all set?
I just want to make a comment, Mr. President.
Councilor Landers.
Ms. Bibby, good job. That's why we have public hearings. It gives you an opportunity to speak, ask questions. Now, when it's in committee, you really don't have that option, but you can go through your city council, you know, your ward. This is going to probably be as much discussion at my meeting as it was tonight, because we do have a couple members of the committee that have some concerns, and we have a couple, I guess you'd call them employees of the Department of Public Works that, you know, have some concerns. So it'll be a good discussion, and I think the committee will come up with, make the right decision. And I'm going to schedule that meeting as soon as possible. I'll work with Karen after this meeting, and certainly, Mr. President, see if we can get it in next week.
Thank you, Councilor Landers. I'll ask the city clerk to read the correspondence from the city engineer.
From City Engineer Thomas DePercio to the City Council regarding the petition of Massachusetts Electric to install a push brace off pole 18 on Mechanic Street, which is needed to support the pole with wires going down Manning Street, order number 22-100-8739, are for the following for your consideration. We are generally not in favor of push braces in the public way, especially in areas with sidewalks. A stub pole anchor on the opposite side of Mechanic Street would be preferred. I recommend that the council ask the applicant to discuss the feasibility of this alternative. Please contact me with any questions. Sincerely, Thomas DePercio, City Engineer.
So, Al, you're hearing that for the first time, but Tom has been in contact with your engineering department, and I'm sure that'll come back when it comes to public service. So if you can just remind the folks
Sure.
at National Grid when it does show up at public service, that they can be prepared to discuss that.
Okay. Sure, no
All
problem.
right, thanks, Al.
Yep.
Any other questions from the city councilors? Questions from the city councilors? Questions from the city councilors? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing and the entire public hearing, and this is in the Public Services Committee. Agenda item number 5.
Now is the time for the public hearing on the application for a special permit, from Markel Frink and Divino Oliveira on behalf of All Fur Love to operate a dog grooming business to be located at 75 Lincoln Street, order number 22-100-8723.
Again, this public hearing we conducted in 4 stages. First, with the public speaking in favor. Second, questions from the public. Third, public speaking in opposition. And finally, questions from the city councilors. We'll start with the first part of the public hearing with the public speaking in favor, starting with the applicant. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Markel Frink, 20 Pickering Road, Blackstone, Mass.
Okay,
So,
describe what you'd like to do.
all right, so we currently own a grooming shop in Medway, Mass. We are interested in 75 Lincoln Street to open a second grooming location. So besides being lifelong animal lovers, we have over 20 years each in the grooming industry. The last 5, we've owned the Medway shop. As far as the shop itself in Marlborough, we'd like to maybe update the outside with some painting, landscaping. I'm sure that lining the side fences with some arborvitaes, to create more of like a private type area. I know another concern when we opened the Medway shop was parking. This lot has 11 spaces, so we'd have about 2 employees. In how we do our grooming services, the clients are in and out. It's not, they're not staying, so they're dropping off and leaving. So no street parking would be needed for that. As far as noise impact, there'd be no outside dogs unattended or anything like that. And all the grooming would be done inside the shop. Business hours would be Monday through Friday, 7 to 6, and Saturdays, 8 to 3. I think with the amount of dogs that Marlborough has currently registered, there's definitely a need for another grooming shop. Also, us bringing in clients from maybe surrounding towns, bringing in more revenue for local restaurants or shops while they're waiting for their dogs to be groomed. I think that's about it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other members of the public speaking in favor? Any other members of the public speaking in favor? Any other members of the public speaking in favor? Hearing none, I'll close that portion of the public hearing. What's that? I haven't got there yet. All right. Questions from the public? Any questions from the public? Any questions from the public? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Public speaking in opposition.
Derek, and I live at 68 Chandler Street in Marlborough, and I lived there for over 27 years. And the houses, this is a residential area, and I own a dog. I love animals myself, but this is going to be a high noise level. She may say it's not going to be, but it is. They're going to be barking as they come in. They're going to be barking when they come out. If they're going to relieve the dogs, and then I saw in the application that she says, oh, perhaps we could have a doggy daycare. What is she going to do then, have an outdoor run? And there's so much noise in the area where I live. You don't live where I live, in that area of where Lincoln Street is and Chandler Street and State Street. There's someone on State Street that recently purchased a large dog. I could hear the dog barking. I'm not going to be able to sleep on a Friday or a Saturday if I have off until 9 o'clock because there will be dogs barking. And this is a closed area. The houses are one on top of another. On one side of that location, you have a one-family house. On the other side, you have a two-family house. And behind it, you have a car repair shop that, according to Pamela Wilderman, the code enforcer, who I've been in touch with this last week on other issues, I could smell the gasoline, the revving of the cars. I could smell the smoke. And what, are we going to have more noise? We don't need any more noise in the neighborhood where I live. You know, why do people buy houses in the neighborhood? It's for peace and quiet. I don't mind people having a dog grooming service. Have it on East Main Street next to the Santander Bank, or what about on West Main Street where the China Taste Chinese restaurant closed? Have it done in a setting where there are storefronts. They want a doggy daycare, rent a warehouse, but you don't put it in a residential area like this. That's what I have to say.
Okay.
I'll be going back to the code enforcer over and over again. This is ridiculous.
Thank you, Karen. Any other members of the public speaking in opposition? Any other members of the public speaking in opposition? Any other members of the public speaking in opposition? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Questions from the city councilors? Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Really just a simple question. Where are the dogs going to relieve themselves?
Basically, we're not going to be taking them out. They're going to be coming in for grooming. They go in the tub. They get dried, they're going on a table, getting a haircut. Typically how we do it now, we text when they're like 10, 15 minutes from being done, and then the owner's there. It's a quick process. We don't keep them.
How long are the dogs there usually, typically?
Depending on the breed, maybe 2 hours at most.
Okay. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Questions from the city councilors? Councilor Navin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to clarify, is there any plan to have any sort of doggy daycare currently? And then will there be?
No, sorry.
No, that's okay. You do not?
No.
Okay, and do you do any type of doggy daycare or boarding at your other facility in, I'm sorry, is it Medway?
Medway, yeah. We have a small daycare. We have about 15, 20 dogs max.
Okay. And then finally, it's a pretty big site, and I know there's a lot of internal storage space there, but do you have any plans, will you need to keep any supplies or equipment outside of the building itself?
No. No, I mean, the only supplies we keep wouldn't last outside, shampoo and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Navin. Councilor Landers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Did you indicate you had, what, 11 parking places?
Yeah, I believe it's 11 total.
How many dogs could you have at one time in there? Or do you space your appointments out?
We space our appointments out, so typically most places, everybody drops off at 8 a.m. and they pick up when they're done. We do everything like on the hour, on the half hour. So people are coming and going. They're not staying. So right now, we have a small parking lot and 2 spaces are dedicated for us, and we're fine with that.
Yeah, you know, Lincoln Street's a pretty busy street. You wouldn't want a dog to get excited when they're leaving there after they look beautiful. And, you know, they run out in Lincoln Street or something.
Oh, I'm on 109 right now, I know.
That's a tough area.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Landers. Any other questions from the city councilors? Questions from Councilor Roby?
Thank you, Mr. President. While I do appreciate your enthusiasm for coming to Marlborough, I do have a couple of questions. I would first like to point out that included in the information we got was a letter from Code Enforcement stating that your request for a building permit was denied, and it states that a non-conforming commercial use has existed for a number of years. We find that your use is more substantial, so you're coming to us for the special permit. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here at all. So I don't know if you can answer my questions. I had sent communication to the solicitor. He responded back to me that I should have you be answering questions tonight. If you can't answer them, this will go before Urban Affairs at some point, and then hopefully someone at the building department can answer them for me. So in 2020, another potential owner applied for a building permit on your site. It went to the ZBA rather than the city council for us, and it was pointed out at that time, I believe, that the Skin and Bones use, which was one of the pre-existing non-conformings, had actually been out of business, and so a new pre-existing non-conforming could not go on the site. So I need to have that clarified. That was in 2020. If a use is not used, non-conforming for 2 years, they lose the non-conforming ability. So if there is no non-conforming pre-existing there, then you shouldn't be here. It should just be a denial by the building commissioner, because I believe looking at the table of uses, you are in an RB district, and I can't find a single use that would qualify under, even though dog grooming is not specifically listed, no other use that might fit what you want to do is allowed in RB, ever. Not with special permit, not with anything. So if you can't clarify that point, then I would hope that we can get it clarified by somebody when this does come to the Urban Affairs, because I don't think you should really be here, but we need to find out for sure. Thank you.
Any other questions from the city councilors? Questions from the city councilors? Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I've known at least 2 people that were running pet grooming out of their house, you know, as a small business. I'm concerned in this case that it's the exclusionary rule of Marlborough, because if you said we don't include dog grooming as part of the issues, then you can't do it anywhere type of thing. So it might get a little bit more elaborate than that, but I'm hoping we can get this addressed through the Urban Affairs discussion. So thank you.
Any other questions from the city councilors? Questions from the city councilors? Questions from the city councilors? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing and the entire public hearing, and this is in Urban Affairs, and you'll be contacted when the Urban Affairs meeting is.
All right, thank you.
Good. Agenda item number 6.
Now is the time for the joint tax classification public hearing with the Board of Assessors to determine the percentage of local tax levy to be borne by each class of property for fiscal year 2023. Order number 22-100-8744.
Okay, so the city council will be having a tax classification hearing with the Board of Assessors, so I'll invite the Board of Assessors to the well. We'll be going through the tax classification information, and the public hearing will be taken up in 4 stages. First, we'll start with the public speaking in favor, starting with, in this case, the assessor's office. Second, questions from the public. Third, public speaking in opposition. And then finally, questions from the city councilors. So I'll ask any members of the public, not necessarily the assessors, to please state their name and address should they want to speak at this evening's meeting. So with that, I will open this evening's meeting up to the Board of Assessors, and John, I'll let you introduce your team.
Just get organized here. Good evening. Hello, everyone. Happy holidays. Mr. Mayor, Council President Ossing, councilors, thank you for this opportunity to present this year's tax classification hearing. I would just like to start out with and briefly give a few thanks, especially to the Mayor's office and their staff, for their continued support. Our Finance Director, Patrick Jones, for all of his help and support throughout the year, as well as Diane Smith in the Auditing Department and her staff. My Board of Assessors who are here tonight, Ellen Silverstein and Jonathan Steinberg. Thank you for all your support throughout the year as well. And also especially to my assessing staff, who are a big part of what we do. So thank you to Kong, Donna, and Maggie in my office. And also just every other department within City Hall and throughout the city who support us and provide assistance throughout the year. As everyone may know, this year the city experienced a healthy increase in values. The overall total value for the city increased by approximately 12.24% from just under $7 billion to approximately $7.8 billion. Marlborough's single-family homeowners are benefiting from increased property values. Price appreciation in the year leading up to this fiscal year 2023, which is represents calendar year 2021, was about 17.73%, which was also in line or comparable to some of the surrounding communities. On average, the surrounding communities like Westborough, Northborough, Southborough, Shrewsbury, they were all within a range of 16.45 to roughly 17.57. The only community, Shrewsbury, that was surveyed was roughly experienced an increase of 13.6. Even the city of Worcester was 16%. Other residential property classes, including condominiums and small multifamilies, family properties, have also experienced market appreciation, mainly due to demand and general market conditions in calendar year 2021. Average commercial values increased by 4.91%, while the average industrial valuation increased by 8.36%. This is primarily due to an increase in demand for these types of properties and an increase in expansion and new development of these property classes. So at this point, I would like to go to the PowerPoint presentation. Okay. See if I can, and I have to point just, see if I can, oops, okay. So on the The first slide is basically a simple breakdown of the fiscal year 2023 levy. And it always starts with the previous year, fiscal year 2022 levy limit. This year we had an amended 2022 growth, which is mainly just an adjustment. The 87,399 figure is an adjustment in the growth, and an adjustment could be an omitted or revised tax bill or an adjustment. So that gets factored into the 2022 levy limit. At that point, the levy increase allowed under Proposition 2.5 is added, which is $3,897,245. New growth revenue this year was healthy at a little over $2.3 million. And that, if you add those figures up, that equates to the fiscal year 2023 levy limit of $162,088,840, with a levy ceiling of over $196 million, rather. And the levy to be raised is roughly over $110 million. And excess levy capacity is slightly over $52 million. This next slide just basically breaks down all the valuation categories from residential, commercial, industrial, and personal property. All of residential properties factored in equates to roughly 71.8% of the overall value, where the CIP, commercial, industrial, personal property, equates to a 28.1512% of the overall total of $7.8 billion plus. That's probably why, right? No. Is it?
Up amounts to.
Which one?
Oops. Wait a minute. Sorry about this. Okay, with this slide just gives a breakdown and shows a comparison of last year, fiscal 22 to fiscal 2023, with a recommended shift of the CIP, again, commercial, industrial, personal property of 1.45. The City of Marlborough tax rate would equate to or would be $11.54 for residential and $20.32 for commercial, industrial, and personal property. This slide is a historical breakdown of the tax rates, and I believe the proposed residential rate of $11.54 still would be the lowest residential rate, I believe, since the early 1990s, which is a good thing. It only means, obviously, that values of properties are increasing and going up, and it allows us to reduce the tax rates, both on the residential and commercial side. The average tax changes. The mayor's office and the assessing office and board of assessors tried to minimize the change this year. The single-family homes are increasing by $199, which represents a change of 3.52%. Condominiums are actually being reduced or going down by $34. As you can see, two-family homes will increase by up to $192, with the three-family properties only increasing by $70. In commercial, commercial industrial, it's a little misleading. As you can see, only because the commercial, the 23 value is average commercial property is $2,255,291. It is higher than last year, but if you notice, the taxes are going down or being reduced, mainly because the proposed commercial rate is going down. So again, values are up, the rates going down. It equates to a lower tax bill for commercial as well as residential. This slide illustrates a 5-year period. It's probably one of the most comprehensive slides as far as a breakdown of all the pertinent figures that goes into the tax classification hearing, setting of the tax rates. It's a breakdown right from the start of total new growth. As you can see, the tax levy, it outlines the levy limit, excess capacity, and so on. It also will illustrate and break down the total residential value and commercial values, all the way down the line, residential value share, what the CPI value share would be. So it really lays out everything you want to know about the breakdown and how things are approved, what was submitted to the state and approved, and how we would come to a conclusion or a recommendation of what the single and the commercial rate can be. This slide shows, going back to 2004 to this fiscal year 2023, it kind of shows a roadmap or a history of the total tax levy, what the maximum levy limit was at that time or that year, the levy ceiling, and the excess levy capacity. I think last year it was mentioned by Council President Ossing that it's somewhat good that we're leaving on the table the excess capacity, which is even greater this year of $52 million. Last year, in comparison, it was $45 million. This year, it represents a 32.11% of excess levy capacity that is not being used. And it's, again, it's just a good slide of information that shows, in regards to Proposition 2.5, where we've been, what the levy limit each year has been, what the maximum is, and where we stand as far as what's being used. This chart just kind of outlines and displays, it illustrates really the excess levy capacity, again, stepping back from 2004 to present day 2023. As I mentioned, it's roughly $7 million increase in levy capacity this year as compared to last year that isn't being utilized. This chart is just a simple illustration of where the levy limit is versus the levy ceiling throughout the years. Total new growth. Outside of 2016, where it spiked to 3.9 million, we had a couple of increases or spikes in fiscal year 2018, as well as 2019. And from that point on, it had slowly decreased over the last 3 years until this year, where it spiked up again to 2.3 million. And that's mainly because I think, again, I remember Council President Ossing mentioning last year that some of the projects that come before the council and get approved doesn't necessarily mean that they're ready to move and move forward. And because of that, there's always a delay, or somewhat of a delay. Once those projects come on board and start development and they break ground, so to speak. I think that's partly what we're seeing this year. We have Green District, which is 1,000, the first phase is 1,000 Green District. That's halfway developed or half finished. So it's projects like that where we start to see some progress, where new growth comes into play, because we can capture, obviously, even if it's 50% complete, we can capture that in the way of new growth. And I just think as an office or department as a whole, now that I'm fully staffed, we were able to control and track new growth, new projects, better than certainly than last year or maybe in the past. This is just a pie chart, as you can see, that shows new growth. It's always the majority of the new growth always is provided or leaned towards the personal property side of things. This year, personal property represented 69% of the growth, where last year it represented roughly 82%. Most of that growth is in the way of utilities, new companies, new businesses coming on board. The BJ's building, I believe, at 350 Campus Drive, they moved in and started occupying that building. So there's a lot of companies coming into the city and providing new property growth. As you can see, the other categories are, minimal. There was a spike in the residential growth or portion this year. Last year, it was roughly 12 or 13%, and this year it's up to 21%. So truly, the residential side, I think, all the way around, not only with single-family average property values, but 2 families, 3 families, and overall, there was just a spike and increase in that those property classes. So as I believe the mayor stated last year and others in the past, that when it comes to an average single-family value or even the average single-family tax bill, you really can't go out into the city and drive to a neighborhood and point to what someone might consider the average house. It really doesn't exist. It's just a mathematical equation where we know half of the values above are certainly greater than the average, and half are below the average. But this does illustrate and gives you some sort of historical measure of where the city has been and where we've gone moving forward over the years. So this year, the average single-family value increased to $507,475 with the average single-family tax bill of $5,856. And again, comparing to last year, that's an increase of a little over 17% from last year's single-family average to this year's. Again, this is a graph or a chart showing the average single-family value, and you can see the line over the years, how it's changed. Also, this chart is just the average single-family tax bill, showing where we are today as compared to back in 2012. This actually is considered by some to be a good source of information or a good comparison over the years. And it compares, it's a regional comparison of the neighboring or surrounding towns and cities or municipalities of the average single-family tax bill. And Marlborough maintains a level where they still are the lowest out of these communities, even with the spike in residential values this year and the spike in the tax bills, the average tax bill. We are still one of the lowest, and the next chart will illustrate where that bottom line across the bottom of this chart, that's Marlborough. So you can see where we still maintain kind of a level increase over the years, but still at the bottom of that chart, which I think is a good indicator of what the city, the mayor's office, the city council has tried to achieve over the years. The next two slides are, the next four slides really are comparison fiscal year 2023 as opposed to fiscal year 2022. The top 10 real estate taxpayers for this year. If you add up the percentage of the total tax levy, that's just under 11% this year. It's actually 10.89% of the top 10 taxpayers. Their portion of what they combine, the aggregate total of the overall tax levy is almost 11%. Compared to last year, actually the total of the percentage of tax levy last year was 11.5%. So it decreased this year. And again, it's mainly due to, again, when you have higher values in lower tax rates, of course, the calculations with a lower proposed tax rate, whether it's residential or the commercial side, will produce a slightly lower in taxes possibly, or at least a lower percentage of the tax levy. Same goes for the top 10 personal property taxpayers for fiscal 23. You can see some of the names on the left, the list there of the taxpayers. It doesn't change very much from year to year. So last year, if you look at 22s, some of the top taxpayers are still on that top 10, but at times they may shift. If they're not number one, they may be number two, or number one may go to number three. But virtually, those properties in those the top 10 taxpayers remain roughly the same throughout the years. Okay, and that concludes the PowerPoint presentation. I would just like to finish with a summation by saying based on the information presented and after considering the valuations of Marlborough's residential and commercial property, the Board of Assessors recommends that the City Council adopt a fiscal year 2023 residential shift factor of 0.823 with a corresponding CIP, which is commercial, industrial, personal property shift of 1.45, producing a residential tax rate of $11.54 and a CIP tax rate of $20.32. Final tax rates are subject to Department of Revenue approval. And thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, John. Any other members of the public wishing to speak in favor? Any other members of the public wishing to speak in favor? Any other members of the public wishing to speak in favor? Hearing none, I'll close that portion of the public hearing. Questions from the public? Any members of the public have any questions? Any questions from the public? Any questions from the public? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Public speaking in opposition. Any members of the public speaking in opposition? Members of the public speaking in opposition. Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Questions from the city councilors? Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I do have a couple of questions just for clarification purposes. Thank you for all the work you folks have done. You demonstrated financial stability for the community as well as businesses as far as attracting people to live and work in Marlborough. It's excellent work here. Most of the personal property is actually corporate billing, right? They bill to corporations. When personal property, people are thinking from a personal perspective, but it's really corporate property, right?
Right, it does represent business equipment and assets. Yep, that they're being taxed on. So
Right.
it's equipment, machinery, and so forth.
Okay, so when Pi moves in next year, you expect them to do a big investment in personal property, and they may probably most likely show up on your radar screens.
It should, that's right.
Yeah. The other is, just for clarification, there's commercial versus industrial, right? And the industrial is pretty straightforward because that's more manufacturing. My question is office space considered commercial, or is office space considered industrial?
Office space is commercial.
Okay, and is retail establishments also commercial?
That's right.
Okay, okay. Thank you for that. And you made a comment that a lot of the taxpayers stay consistent, like the top players are always the top players. Is that true across all the different categories that you reviewed? Like you talked about the top real estate, the top personal property, they always stay on that same playground, shall we say?
Virtually, it does. For the past few years, that top 10 list doesn't change a whole heck of a lot. One example would be Campus Drive, again, where the BJs went into.
Right.
You don't exactly have a full value there. You start off with a full assessed value, but because of TIFs being in place and a TIF that was applied this year to the BJ's facility or building, that kind of reduces the overall value. So in that situation where maybe Campus Drive, I forget where in the order they may have been, but if they were at number one, maybe they dropped to third on the list or something like that, second to fourth or something. But
no, I know where you're going with that. That's fine. So overall, no, thank you very much for the review and the information with this.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Doucette. Any other questions from the city councilors? Questions from the city councilors? Questions from the city councilors? Councilor Irish.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to say thank you to the principal assessor and his team, Board of Assessors, the mayor and his team as well for all the work and the information that you've given us. I'm in full support this evening of the 1.45 shift factor. Just to take in, the values are in line with in range with the sales data, reflective of the increase of the sale prices over that period of time. And just to underline, the average single-family home, I will use that as underline, will see an estimated property tax adjustment of $199. Compare that to surrounding communities with much less services available to offer their residents. That's a pretty good amount. So I certainly believe this to be fair and equitable, and I will be in full support of this evening. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Irish. Any other questions from the city councilors? Councilor Orm.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the assessors for your work. Question, and it fluctuates, not by a lot, but the shift factor. Right now it's up to 1.45. I think last year it was 1.40. It goes back and forth. It was 1.43 a few years back. What allows you to make that decision on where you're going with the shift factor?
Well, I think the consensus, or from what part of our meetings when we get together to discuss this, that you really don't want to, and you try not to approach that 1.5 shift. And I don't want to say that's the land of no return, but once you achieve that or go to that point, it's awfully hard to back off or remove yourself from that level. I think what we were trying to accomplish this year was looking at last year's shift factor of 1.4, looking at the maximum of 1.5, and trying to reasonably stay within the middle and not increase the average residential tax burden or increase overall across the board, and kept it at a level of $199 increase. And that just happened to be on the shift line or option, so to speak, of the 1.45. So if you look at it, if you will, it's halfway between the 1.4 of last year and the so-called max of 1.5, and I think it was a reasonable way of coming to, you know, to, again, lessen the burden overall to the residential taxpayers.
And at the same time, the real world out there, we're starting to see let's put it this way, not a lack of interest, but less commercial industrial properties, not just in Marlborough, but throughout the country, I believe, with people working at home, not a major demand for retail space or commercial space. Was that part of your reasoning as well?
Well, it is. I think the fact that we went through the COVID situation really changed everything. We see a lot more vacant space in office buildings due to either a hybrid scenario of employees working partly from home, partly in the office, no longer needing that much space. I can think of a few buildings that have a lot of space available or considering various options where they don't need these large buildings any longer. But you know, I think we've still had a modest increase in commercial industrial properties. For example, in Westboro, the industrial, and Jonathan Steinberg, and he happens to be the assessor for Westboro, and their industrial values went up over, I believe it was 22%. So that's quite an increase. Our increase was 8 points in change, increase in industrial, which is quite a bit different than what happened last year. It was virtually level and not much really moved on the commercial industrial sector. So,
thank you. And again, great presentation. I like all the data. I like how you go back in the years so we can look at the comparisons. And just one comment I make at every tax classification meeting. You'll probably see in the headlines, tax rate goes down. But our residents should realize their property values went up, so they're going to have an increase in their taxes. I think the average is $200 for personal property, about per average home.
For a single-family average home, that is correct. It equates to $199 in change. But again, that's where I think the mayor's office, as well as the Board of Assessors, try to keep that at a minimal and look at a reasonable, I don't want to say compromise, but not only are we looking at and should only be looking at this year, but also projections, you know, possibly for next year, what will happen next year. So that shift, if you're at a level this year or even higher, what will happen next year? And again, we don't know how high or what sort of appreciation values we'll have next year. So we try to consider, you know, everything as best as possible.
And I believe your work was properly done, and nice to have another fellow assessor on the board. I'm not a fellow. We have another assessor's associate in the room too. But, you know, you see it right up front, so I appreciate all the work you put into this, and thank you for your presentation, all of you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Oram. Any other questions from the city councilors? Councilor Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to echo the sentiments of other councilors and really thank the Board of Assessors and your office and the Mayor's office work and everyone here on the City Council. This was a very thorough presentation. I so appreciate all of the breakdowns and understanding of keeping that steady increase in taxes. You know, I know it's the average that was described. Some people might be higher, some people might be lower, but having that vantage point is really useful. I do have two quick questions. One is around when you were speaking to the delayed new growth that exists. So when you had I guess there was a chart that was available. How much of that, I guess, I know you said some projects were maybe started later or weren't fully completed, but also with the pandemic, was that also part of the delay as well?
In the past 2 years, well, that is correct. In the past 2 years, we've seen delays in a lot of different areas. Not only with, even if a property has a TIF, bringing a TIF online may get delayed possibly a year and not start in the year it was supposed to. Projects were delayed due to labor shortages, high cost of materials. I can remember where I came from, projects, apartment buildings or other projects were just delayed for months and months because they couldn't get the materials that they needed, or the materials were so much higher that it wasn't cost effective to start the project when they wanted to. So that's why I mentioned earlier, I think we're seeing some of those projects come online and start to progress and move forward. And again, it's all part of the new growth, and it ultimately benefits the city.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. And then I had a question regarding, I know there's the chart with the regional comparison, which is very helpful because often we're not always aware of what other communities are. And I, as a tagline, I would say I also would love to know when more of these 23 numbers come in, please keep us updated because I'm sure not everyone has made those decisions yet. My question is around how many of these municipalities also have a split tax rate as we do, where there is the commercial, industrial, and the residential, where there is that more delineated split. I know some don't have as much industrial or commercial properties, so I was curious. I know some of these communities do have that, but I'm thinking the majority of them might not, so I'm just curious.
They may. I would have to take a further look at it. Off the top of my head, I can't quote all the surrounding towns and cities, but the ones I can say the communities that have a split rate, it's usually because the commercial industrial tax base is at a level or high enough to warrant at some point the shift being split. I know in Worcester and other communities, every year it's part of the job as the select board or city council to look at possibly going from either a single rate to a split rate if it makes sense for the municipality, or going back. If you have currently a split rate, maybe going back to a single rate, which I think is very difficult to do because you have to lessen that gap from the commercial and industrial lower and lower and lower each year until you get to a point where it makes sense to go back to a single rate. Cities like Worcester, they always talk about it from year to year. I don't think we'll ever, never say never, but it would be very difficult for them to go back to a single tax rate, and possibly the city of Marlborough. Even though we try to achieve getting closer and closer, it isn't certainly up to me to make that decision. But
well, I fully support what you all have presented. I was just curious. I know there was a line on one of the pages around if there was a single rate, it was going to be 14 point something, which obviously would be a huge increase for the residents. So it is appreciated that there is that split. But I just wanted to, raise that for people who might not be aware of like why there's the split rate and the benefit that it has for their, average tax bill each year.
This fiscal year, if the city of Marlborough went to a single rate, I believe it was $14.01. So
it's about an $1,100 increase in the average tax bill.
Yeah, so much more than the $199 that we've seen. But thank you all so much. I want to, just again say how much we appreciate it. This is always one of, I think, the most informative meetings that we have because it's just so great to have all of this data. So thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Palmer. Any other councilors with questions? Any other questions from the City Council? Any other questions from the City Council? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing and the entire public hearing. John, Ellen, Jonathan, thank you very much. Nice job. Kong, well done. Thank you. Yes, oh, absolutely, John.
I can turn on my mic. Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to take a moment to thank the City Council and yourself, Mr. President, as well as the Mayor's office for all the support they've given John during the rebuilding of the office. It was not without the support of you folks in staffing and bringing John on that the city has benefited tremendously. I want to thank John for doing such a tremendous job, taking over, staffing his entire staff, Kong, Donna, and Maggie, his two clerks that really give excellent customer service and support the board in ways that we can have faith that it's really in good hands. And we're very fortunate to have an asset like John Blade leading the office. So thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And I did not pay him to say that. So.
Thank you, Jonathan. Those are good comments. So thank you very much.
I love the data they give us.
Okay, with that, we will move on to agenda item number 7.
Communication from the mayor regarding the fiscal year 2023 tax classification hearing information and tax levy offset transfer requests totaling $885,019.97.
Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to approve the transfer of $46,650 from sales of graves to offset the FY 2023 tax levy, and motion to approve the transfer of $838,369.97 from the overlay reserve to offset the FY 2023 tax levy, please.
Motion made and seconded to approve the 2 transfers to offset the levy. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the 2 transfers? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Both transfers are approved, 11-0. Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to approve the setting of the FY 2023 tax rates and set the residential factor at 0.8237 with a corresponding CIP shift of 1.45 pending approval of the city annuals recap by the Massachusetts DOR.
Motion made and seconded to approve setting the residential factor at 0.8237 with a corresponding shift factor of 1.45. And again, it's always dependent on the Department of Revenue blessing off our numbers. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is approved. 11-0, the taxes have been set for fiscal year 23. Thank you, councilors. Agenda item number 8.
Communication from the mayor regarding grant acceptance in the amount of $3 million from the MassWorks Infrastructure Program through the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development, awarded to the Department of Public Works, to be used for various road and intersection improvements throughout the city.
Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to approve the grant, please.
Motion made and seconded to approve the grant. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Grant is approved, 11-0. Agenda item number 9.
Communication from the mayor regarding grant acceptance in the amount of $49,182 from the Massachusetts Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, awarded to the Conservation Commission to be used for continued restoration in the natural desert area.
Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to approve the grant, please.
Motion made and seconded to approve the grant. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor Oram.
Just for the listening audience, we don't have a desert in Marlborough, but we have a beautiful area for walking trails in that area, as well as conservation areas. So I think most people probably know it, but just in case. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Oram. Any other questions on the motion to approve the grant? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is approved, 11-0. Agenda item number 10.
Communication from the mayor regarding grant acceptance in the amount of $23,100 from the Mass Cultural Council, awarded to the Cultural Council to be used to support arts programs throughout the community.
Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to approve the grant, please.
Motion made and seconded to approve the grant. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The grant is approved, 11-0. We good? All right. Agenda item number 11.
Communication from Assistant City Solicitor Jeremy McManus regarding petition of Verizon Wireless for the installation of a small cell wireless facility to be located on pole number 34 within the layout of the public way near 385 Farm Road in proper legal form, order number 22-100-8695.
Councilor Landers.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll accept it and place on file, and we'll move it down to item 18.
Motion made and seconded to accept and place on file the correspondence and move this item down to agenda item number 18. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is approved to move to number 18 and file 11-0. Agenda item number 12.
Communication from Central Mass Mosquito Control Project regarding notice of the 2023 Commission meeting dates.
Councilor Oram.
Sure, I'll take this one. May I ask that we accept and place this on file, but it will be, I presume, I always look at our city clerk on his site for the meetings that they plan to have during the 2023 year. Thank you.
Motion made and seconded to accept and place on file the communication. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is approved to file 11-0. Agenda item number 13.
Communication from the Department of Public Utilities regarding petition of Mass Electric Company and Nantucket Electric Company, DBA National Grid, for approval to exclude Mystic Cost of Service Agreement costs.
Councilor Brown.
Move to accept and place on file the communication.
Motion made and seconded, accept and place on file the communication. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is approved to file, 11-0. Agenda item 14.
Communication from the Department of Public Utilities regarding petition of NSTAR Electric Company, DBA Eversource Energy, for approval of an alternative basic service procurement plan.
Councilor Brown.
Move to accept and place on file the communication.
Motion made and seconded to accept and place on file the communication. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is filed, 11-0. Agenda item 15.
Communication from Colonial Power Group regarding response to Department of Public Utilities relative to increased number of complaints regarding aggregation programs.
Councilor Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my understanding that we looked into this, and then there's been some issues in other communities, but in Marlborough we haven't had any issues. Our website is up to date. There's no problems with it. There's no reported customer problems that we're aware of, but if anyone listening to this is having a concern, they should know that they can contact the mayor's office or contact Colonial. So since this is really not an issue directly impacting Marlborough at this time, I move that we just accept and place this on file.
Motion made and seconded to accept and place on file the communication. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The communication is filed, 11-0. Agenda item 16.
Minutes of boards, commissions, and committees.
Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Motion to accept on place and file the minutes of the boards, commissions, and committees.
Motion made and seconded to accept and place on file all the minutes. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Minutes are filed, 11-0. Agenda item 17.
Claims.
Councilor Doucette.
Oh, Mr. President.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're switching it up.
My
We're
bad.
switching
Councilor
it up.
Perlman.
Move to refer claims to the legal department. Thank you.
I got it written right here. Call on Samantha. Motion made and seconded to refer to the legal department. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? It is going to legal, 11-0. Thank you, Councilor Perlman. Reports of committees. Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance Committee met on November 28th, 2022. We had one item on the agenda that evening, order number 2022-100-8736. Communication from Mayor Vigent together with the City Council resolution and proposed tax increment financing agreement with PI, Physique Instrument LP, a global manufacturer and supplier of positioning technology to operate at 130 Lizard Drive, City Assessors Map 90, Parcel 2A. The Mayor and David Rago addressed the proposal. PI is a global manufacturer and supplier of precision positioning technology, serving industrial automation, microscopy, and life sciences, semiconductor, photonics, and large-scale scientific projects with U.S. headquarters currently in Auburn, Mass. They will be investing approximately $4.9 million in combined soft, real property, and personal property costs at the project area, which includes an existing 100,000 square foot building that has been vacant for close to 3 years. PI will develop the site into a corporate headquarters with a plan to relocate 64 permanent full-time jobs from the Auburn and Hopkinton sites and create an additional 40 permanent full-time positions over a 10-year span of the TIF agreement that will be open to qualified Marlborough residents. Ward Councilor Brown spoke in support of the TIF, favoring the manufacturing use over the apartment and self-storage proposals that were brought to attention in a recent past. Councilor Orem and Perlman, Doucette, and Landers were supportive of the TIF for various reasons. Mr. Rigo stated he hopes to become a longtime member of the community and to work with local schools to train new technicians. Councilor Orem noted the savings of $201,000 is not critical when balanced by other benefits the company will contribute to the community. Councilor Perlman questioned transportation and whether transportation services have been considered. The mayor replied that MEDC has been encouraging businesses to promote commuter service, and if PI has interested employees, MEDC will work with them accordingly. The mayor reminded councilors that the TIF is based on new value and additional jobs that will be created accordingly to requirements set by the state. The tax adjustment is only on the new investment, not the tax base. If the company does not meet the requirements set forth in the agreement, there is no tax adjustment. Council Irish thanked the mayor for reiterating the company will pay all taxes due for the base value of the property as required. The added value to the city is that the company owns the building and will be making additional investment of $4.9 million. Those are pluses going forward for the city. On a motion by Councilor Brown, seconded by the chair, the committee recommends approval of the City Council resolution and the TIF agreement. The vote carried 4-0 with one absent, and meeting adjourned at 7:49 p.m. And I will be asking for a suspension this evening, Mr. President.
Been a motion by the finance chair to suspend the rules to report this out of committee tonight. All those in favor of the suspension? Opposed? The suspension is approved, 11-0. Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to approve the TIF agreement and the City Council resolution with PI Physique Instruments, please.
Motion is made and second to approve the City Council resolution and the TIF agreement with PI Instruments. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The TIF agreement and the resolution are approved, 11-0. Councilor Dumas.
Thank you, Mr.
Hang
President.
on. Now it's approved.
Thank you. So official. If I could ask for a suspension of the rules to have the city clerk read in the mayor's letter regarding the HR director position.
Councilor Dumas has asked for suspension of rules to accept the correspondence from the mayor. All those in favor of the suspension? Who's good? Looks like everybody's good. All right, everybody's okay with that? I'll ask the clerk to please read the mayor's letter.
Letter from the mayor regarding the appointment of John Harmon as Human Resources Director. Honorable President Ossining and Councilors, I am pleased to submit for your approval the appointment of John Harmon as the City of Marlborough's new Director of Human Resources for a 3-year term to expire 3 years from the date of City Council approval. Mr. Harmon began his tenure today under my 60-day temporary appointment. Mr. Harmon most recently was practicing law and specializing in estate planning, trust, divorce, personal injury, and bankruptcy. He spent 5 years as a human resource director in various school districts, as well as 5 years in municipal HR in the city of Leominster. As an attorney, Mr. Harmon brings vital experience in contract negotiation, office management, and handling the complexities within the world of municipal human resources, and will be a great asset to the city. Enclosed is his resume for your review. I want to thank former Human Resources Director David Brumby for his assistance in supporting the office in an interim role and assisting with the interview process. Thank you in advance for your consideration, and please let me know if you have any questions. Sincerely, Arthur G. Vigent, Mayor.
Councilor Dumas.
Thank you, City Clerk. If I could motion to move to the Personnel Committee.
Motion made and seconded to refer this matter to the Personnel Committee. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is going to Personnel, 11-0. Any other reports of committees? Reports of committees? Hearing none. Agenda item 18.
Order number 22-100-8695B, petition of Verizon Wireless for the installation of a small cell wireless facility to be located on pole number 34 within the layout of the public way near 385 Farm Road. Recommendation of the Public Services Committee is to approve.
Councilor Landers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve the petition. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The petition is approved, 11-0. Agenda item 19.
Order number 22-100-8663A, the reappointment of Cheryl Susi to the Disabilities Commission for a 3-year term to expire October 21st, 2024. Recommendation of the Personnel Committee is to approve.
Councilor Dumas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve the reappointment. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is approved, 11-0. Agenda item 20.
Order number 22-100-8664B, the appointment of Adrian Gilbert to the Historical Commission for a term expiring 3 years from City Council confirmation. Recommendation of the Personnel Committee is to approve.
Councilor Dumas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve the appointment. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is approved, 11-0. Agenda item 21.
Order number 22-100-8690, the appointment of N. Paul Tonthat to the Community Development Authority for a 3-year term to expire on March 25th, 2025, and the reappointment of Paul Sliney for a 3-year term to expire on March 9th, 2025. Recommendation of the Personnel Committee is to approve.
Council Dumas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to approve.
Motion is made and seconded to approve both the appointment and the reappointment. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Both appointments are approved, 11-0. Agenda item 22.
Order number 22-100-8678B, proposed salary ordinance pursuant to Chapter 125 Personnel, Section 6, Salary Schedule, to create a new position entitled Substance Use Prevention Coordinator and Intervention Specialist within the Health Department with a seven-step salary table minimum of $58,000 to a maximum of $65,317.42 for a 35-hour work week, together with the proposed job description pursuant to Chapter 125, Section 5, preparation of classification descriptions. Recommendation of the Finance Committee is to approve as amended. Action was postponed to the December 5th, 2022 City Council meeting, and the advertising requirement has been met.
Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move the recommendation of committee to propose a salary ordinance and to a motion to approve the salary schedule and a motion to approve the job description, please.
Okay, so we'll take them up. First, we'll take a motion's been made and second to approve the salary ordinance. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, this is an ordinance change, so it has to go through the 4 stages. Any discussions before we go into the 4 stages? Seeing none, all those in favor of suspending the first reading and approving the second? All in favor? Opposed? We are going on to the second one. All those in favor of the passage to be enrolled? Opposed? It is enrolled. All those in favor of the passage to be ordained? 11-0, it is ordained. Is there any objection to passing in one evening? Hearing none, the ordinance is approved. And on the second motion to approve the job description. Motion to be made, second to approve the job description. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The job description is approved. Agenda item 23.
Order number 22-100-8701A, proposed amendment to the City Code, Chapter 125, Personnel, Section 6, Salary Schedule and proposed job description pursuant to Chapter 125, Personnel, Section 5, preparation of classification descriptions to create a new position entitled Treasury Payroll Manager within the Finance Department. Recommendation of the Finance Committee is to approve. This matter was ordered advertised at the November 21st, 2022 City Council meeting. The advertisement was published on the 28th of November, but action cannot be taken until the December 19th, 2022 meeting to comply with the 10-day period as required by the Charter.
Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to postpone to December 19, 2022 City Council meeting, please.
Motion is made and seconded to postpone this item to our December 19th meeting. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is postponed to December 19th. Councilor Dumas.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned at 9:27. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Good over 10.